Hello everyone, welcome to the 2025 Intergalactic Learn with the Nerds Day brought to you by Pragmatic Works. My name is Emily Taylor and I'm absolutely thrilled to have the honor of guiding you through the data analytics with Excel portion of our event. We are going to start by embarking on an exciting journey together, diving into Excel. I'm going to show you how to level up your data game. We're going to explore some incredibly powerful features that might not be as well known, but are definitely game changers in Excel. Get ready to tap into the magic of the Power Query Editor and Power Pivot. We're also going to learn how to transform your standard Excel tables into pivot tables for quick and insightful calculations. I recommend sitting back and watching this demo because I am going to move pretty quickly through all of these amazing tools. But don't worry, our Learn with the Nerds content is being recorded. So if you do want to follow along and I'm moving too fast, you can always pause, go back, and slow things down. If you want to follow along at your own pace, just download the course files and join me later. If you're eager to dive in right now, make sure you have the desktop version of Excel on your computer. Unfortunately, Power Query and Power Pivot just aren't available in the web version of Excel, so you do need the desktop version if you do plan to follow along. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's have some fun with data analytics. As you can see here on my screen, I have my Excel document open. I haven't brought in any data yet because instead of opening it up as a file, I'm going to go ahead and open this data up in the Power Query Editor before I bring it into my file. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Data tab and click Get Data. I want to go get my data from that Excel file where my data is being tracked for all of our projects. I'm going to search through my files until I find that intergalactic folder and find my intergalactic nerds data set. I'm going to click import and you will notice a window popped up that's called the navigator window. I'm going to be bringing in all 4 tabs from my worksheet. So I'm going to click select multiple items and select the 4 tables that I will be bringing in. Once I have those selected, I'm going to click transform data because there's just a few things that I want to clean up with this data set before I bring it into my Excel workbook. Now in my Power Query Editor window, I want to point out that this window is separate from my Excel worksheet behind me. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to clean up my data in the Power Query Editor and log every single transformation that I make to my data over here in my applied steps on the right. This is the great thing about the Power Query Editor is if I have project data that is going to continue to grow, as that file increases, I can set up refreshes on my data that allow for my applied steps to keep track of all of the transformations that I make. And when that new data comes in, when I click the refresh button, that new data will get those same transformations applied to it that I'm going to do here right now. I've got all 4 queries over here in my queries pane, but each file name has something weird with it that I want to adjust. The first thing that I'm going to do is come over to my properties and remove that number 1 next to employee. After I've changed my employee name, I'm going to scroll over and take a peek at a couple of these columns. Right away, I notice that my salary is identified as a whole number, but I know later I'm going to want this to be currency. So I'm going to shift it to currency now, and I'm going to replace the current step that I'm on because that is the last step in my applied steps. The next thing that I'm going to do is adjust my zip code. Typically, whenever zip codes come into the Power Query Editor thinks that they're a whole number because there's numbers in that entire column. But the problem with whole numbers is in Excel, whole numbers delete leading zeros. Zip codes have leading zeros. So anytime you have an identifier like a zip code in a column, you're going to want to change that number to a text. That way the leading zero at the beginning remains there. We're going to replace the current step so that that 0 doesn't disappear. And just like that, I've cleaned up this query. Let's go ahead and make some changes to the other queries that I have. Here you see I have my location data. I'm going to rename that to headquarter or HQ locations. I'm going to change the zip code column to a text just like I did on the previous query and replace my current step. Next, I'm going to go to project task. I'm going to get rid of that underscore, make it have just a standard space, and then I'm going to go to the projects tab where everything looks to be good. Nothing to clean up here. All right, and for the next transformation that I want to show you in the Power Query Editor, I'm going to show you how to transform your column names. As you see here, right here in my projects query, I have a few columns that do not have spaces between two different words. I went ahead and included in our course files some notes that are saved into a notepad with some M scripts. The Power Query Editor uses a formula language called mQuery, and I'm not going to get in too much about the advanced editor, but if there are specific things that you want to clean up with your data, you can go into the advanced editor and add some lines of script in there to make big data transformations. Now, typically, people just use the graphic user interface and these buttons up here at the top, but knowing that we have this advanced editor button and the ability to go in and apply functions to make changes to our data is a good thing to know. So let's go ahead and click on that advanced editor. And if you haven't already, go ahead and get that notepad open as well. For that projects query, I'm going to go ahead and grab that entire script right here underneath projects query, and I'm going to add it in my last line of code. Essentially, what I'm going to be doing is telling the Power Query Editor to add spaces to all of the column names that have capital letters to separate the words. Now, in order to add a line of script, I need to put a comma in and then enter down to the next line of code. I'm going to go ahead and click Control V to copy that line of code in, and you'll see it's a little bit long, but we are adding spaces using that table.transform column names. Now, the very last thing that I need to do to make this in expression work, to make this actually show up in my data, is to change that in expression to the last line of code that I added, which is add spaces. Now, before I hit done, I just want to show you one thing in this code that makes it unique to this projects query and why exactly I have 3 different codes for 3 different queries over here in my queries pane. Whenever I had my projects ID column and I filled this in for the first time, I and D are both capitalized. So essentially what I was trying to do was transform my column names, but I was telling it to go search for the capital letters and add a space before the capital letter inside of those names. That meant that project ID was coming out as project space I space D. So what I did is I put in a parameter that excluded all of our columns that have IDs specifically. Like in this instance, I said, transform that column name if it is not the column that says project ID. So every one of these queries has a different formula based on the column names that we have. I'm going to go ahead and click done. And you'll notice, there we have it. My start date has a space, my project name has a space, and then that project ID has been left alone, which shouldn't be a problem later on because I'm not going to use those ID names for my pivot table later anyways. We're going to go ahead and click on that project's task query. I'm going to grab that same M code from that notepad, copy it, click on that advanced editor, and go to that last line in the let expression to the very end, put in that comment and click enter, where I can paste in that line of code. I'm going to change that last in expression to the add spaces step. Click tab to make it work and click done. Now, if you're curious about what the advanced editor is and all of the things that you can do in it, I'm going to encourage you to check out our Excel bootcamp on our website. We have boot camps where we walk you through Excel, including the Power Query Editor, and we take you through a journey of learning how to transform your data, both with these graphic user interface buttons and by adding things to scripts in the advanced editor. I'm going to go ahead for this last query, and I'm going to go to this employee query, and I'm going to put that advanced editor. I'm going to put that comma on the last line, enter down, paste it on in, and then change that in expression to add spaces. I'm going to click done. And then the very last query that I haven't changed yet will be this headquarters location. That's because I wanted to show you that you are able to edit column names by just simply double clicking as well. In this instance, street address is the only one that needs a space, so I figured I would demo it that way too, in case you're not interested in digging into the advanced editor every time you want to add spaces to a column name. Now, it looks like we've got our data cleaned up, so let's go ahead and get this into our worksheets. We're going to go ahead and click close and load. We have the option to close and load or close and load to. In our instance, close and load is going to be perfect for what we need. Now, if you chose close and load to, you have the opportunity to connect it to some sort of semantic model or bring it into a pivot table directly. But I want to see our data in table format. So clicking close and load to, you can see we have all 4 worksheets that have been converted into tables already. How do I know these are tables? Well, simply by looking at these drop downs right up here in our column headings, that's a good indicator that this data has already been put into table format. What is a table good for? Well, tables are awesome if you want to be able to filter your data. Maybe you want to just filter your data to search your employees by the Midwest headquarters. I can go to that column, click the drop down, and filter down to the Midwest headquarters to get a count of all of the employees in the Midwest. I can remove those filters. I can do things such as sort my data. Let's go with project tasks. Maybe I want to sort my data by just one specific project and click OK. As you can see, I've got 3 tasks that are tied to project 1007. Now that we've explored tables a little bit, I want to dive into my bread and butter, my favorite part of Excel, the whole reason that I ever picked up this tool to begin with, functions. I'm going to go ahead and go to sheet 1 where I have an empty table. Now, if I wasn't going to build a few functions for you to check out, I probably would just delete this tab from my worksheet because it's just some extra information in here. But in order to display some functions, I'm going to go ahead and make some columns that will allow me to display a few functions. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy in a couple of employee numbers. I'm going to show you a function to search for an employee name based on their function. I'm going to show you how to search for an employee's salary from that employee number. And then the last thing that I'm going to show you is how to create a count of project tasks based on an employee number. So let me start by going over to my projects task table, and I'm going to grab some employee numbers from those project tasks. I'm just going to grab a random array of numbers. I'm going to copy that list and bring it over to my sheet 1 where I've got a bunch of employee numbers that I can run and test my functions. All right, the first function that we're going to uncover is the XLOOKUP function. XLOOKUP is great because it allows you to search for one range of values and then return a result from a different range of values. XLOOKUP is great because it simplifies the lookup process compared to the VLOOKUP or former HLOOKUP functions. We're going to go ahead and use the XLOOKUP function here in this cell. Click Tab to turn it into a function. And then the first thing that we're going to declare is the lookup value. We're going to be looking up this employee number in cell C4 and put in our comma. And then let's hop over to that employee table where we can return that employee name based on their employee ID. we need to declare the lookup array. The lookup array is in column B. So go ahead and select that entire column, put a comma in, and then let's declare the array that we want the information to return from. We want the full employee name. So I'm going to select column A, and then we have these square boxes around the additional fields that we can enter. Now the square boxes means that this information is optional. Is there something that I want it to return if that employee number is not found? Sure, let's go ahead and have it say no employee found. And I'm going to go ahead and close that parentheses, and I'm going to click that green check mark. It's going to launch me back to my site page where my function is at, and it looks like this employee ID, E01015, is tied to Patrick Phillip. Let's go ahead and use the employee table just to double check. E01015 is in fact tied to Patrick Phillip. The next function that we're going to talk about is VLOOKUP. It's very similar to XLOOKUP, but you will find that you do have to think a little bit differently when you're using the VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP requires you to search the entire array of information rather than clicking specific columns that you want for the lookup value and then for the return value. So right here in this box, we're going to put the equal sign and we're going to type in VLOOKUP. Let's go ahead and declare the lookup value as whatever is in C4. We're going to put our comma in and then go over to the employee table to grab columns B all the way to column J. So I went ahead and held down my cursor as I clicked on B, sliding over to J. You'll see it's saying from the employee table, search all of column B to column J. Now, this is where it gets a little bit different than our XLOOKUP. VLOOKUP requires us to identify the column index number. The way that Excel used to think is not in letter terms across the top of our columns. Instead, for the VLOOKUP function, we actually have to think numerically. So B is going to be number 1 because it's the first column in my array, and I need to count concurrently until I get to column J. I know that J is going to be my 9th column, so I'm going to say search until you get to the 9th column and return the value in the 9th column. Close that parentheses and click enter. And now you'll see that Patrick made $145,000. If I want to format that differently, I can go in and change it to English US currency here in this number formatting portion of my ribbon up at the top. I'm going to go ahead and just for fun, I'm going to change the employee information in my salary just because I noticed it started to bother me in that other table. So let's go ahead and get it changed here as well. And then finally, over here in sheet 1, the last function that I want to uncover is the COUNTIF function. I want to know how many projects Patrick is in charge of. I'm going to go ahead and use equals COUNTIF. COUNTIF is going to let me count the number of projects that have this specific employee number. So let's go ahead and go to that project tasks. And let's go ahead and grab that entire column. We're going to say count that range. And what is the criteria that we're looking for? The criteria is over on sheet 1. We want that range to match that particular number. And then close that parentheses. And just like that, you'll see it looks like Patrick is in charge of 3 different tasks. If I wanted to, I could go ahead and check that. I could go to my project tasks tab. I could go to my assigned employees. I could get rid of everybody and just go to Patrick and click OK. Here you can see the 3 different tasks that Patrick is in charge of. Now, let's go ahead and get rid of that filter and get our data back into a full table. The final thing that I want to show you involving my functions over here on sheet 1 is the fact that I can pull this XLOOKUP function by just grabbing the bottom corner and dragging it down to all of these cells down below. Now, the nice part about this is as I drag this function down, it does not carry Patrick Phillips' name down all the way. Instead, it carries that formula down. That formula is going to shift that original lookup value down a cell, just like the XLOOKUP function is being shifted down a cell. It's going to shift you down to the next number down in the rows. We can do the same thing for our salary. And then finally, we can do the same thing with our count of project tasks. Now that we've covered how to write functions manually, let's see how Copilot can assist us in streamlining these tasks. With Copilot's powerful capabilities, we can enhance our productivity and simplify complex operations. We also can use Copilot to help us come up with hidden insights and trends that we might not have even wondered about when we originally were looking at our data. So, you might be asking, can I use Copilot in Excel? Who can use Copilot in Excel? First, we need to check your license as well as your version. Copilot in Excel is available to users with a Microsoft 365 subscription that includes Copilot features. You can check that here. Go ahead and click on File and then Account here in the bottom left. You know you have Copilot if you see the Copilot icon inside of the This Product Contains section. If it's included here, that means Copilot will be embedded in any of these Microsoft products. You can also check your Excel version by clicking the About Excel section. If you're not seeing Copilot within Excel and you know you have a license, that means you probably need to upgrade your Excel version. Go ahead and click OK and click the back button. And the last and final thing that you're going to want to check when using Copilot in Excel is that autosave has been turned on. Now, typically, Copilot will still be there and you'll be able to click on it, but as soon as you go to click on that Copilot button, it will prompt you to turn autosave on in order to use it. Now, let's go ahead and head over to the employee table. Here on the employee table, I have a ton of different employees that all have a very wide range of salaries. I have some employees that are making close to $300,000, while I have others that are at the $50,000 range, some that are even at the $35,000 range. I started to wonder what was the average salary for my company, and then I noticed, well, some of these employees actually work in different departments. So I thought, maybe I need to be comparing the average salary based on department within my organization and then determine if these employees have different salaries that are excessively above those department averages or excessively below. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll up here to this cell that is at the top of my table, here in my employee table. I'm going to click on this salary and I'm going to let Copilot help me figure this out. I know that there's going to be a few things that are going to be involved whenever I'm creating this function because I want to know if Courtney Patterson's salary is above average for the IT department that she works in, or if it is below the average. And then I also want to know if Steven's salary is above or below in his respective department. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Copilot button. And then I'm going to click on the Ask Copilot button right here. And it's going to open up the Copilot pane. I can ask a question, I can ask my business question, and I can be as specific as give me a function to help me solve my problem. I'm going to go ahead and type in, give me a function to determine if this salary is above or below the average salary for a person in this or that fits in that department. I'm asking Copilot to come up with a function that will filter the salary, determining the average based on the department for that person. It's going to take a minute to think. It's going to tell you the entire table that it's using to calculate the information. And then as you see, it's going to go ahead and return that function for us. The nice part about Copilot is typically it doesn't just give you the function, it tells you what it did. It's telling us that it's comparing employee salary to the average salary within their respective departments. I can also see the function here. And as I'm scrolling through it, I'm seeing they used an if statement, but I'm also seeing some at signs. I see an at salary and an at department. Okay, now here I'm recognizing that not everyone may know what the at symbol means in Excel. So let's ask Copilot for some more detailed explanation about what does that at symbol mean. Giving it a second to think. And then the nice part is it's going to give us a detailed explanation about what the at symbol is used for, as well as what it specifically is doing inside of this if function that it gave us for our column that we're going to build. It says that the at symbol is going to reference the value in the current row of a table. So for example, we're going to reference that particular salary, and we are referencing that particular department within that if statement. I'm going to go ahead and scroll back up. Now that I know what that if statement or that if function does for us, I'm going to go ahead and click the copy button. I'm going to go over here to column Q, and I'm going to create a column heading first off and say above or below salary indicator. Click off of it. Can make my column a little bit wider if I want. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Control V to copy that function right on in. And as you can see, it went ahead and filled it in all the way down. But this if function says if the salary here in this line is greater than the average salary of the department that is on that line. That at statement is pretty much indicating that we're looking in this row of data only. We're saying if it is greater than the average salary for the IT department, then go ahead and write above average, otherwise write below average. So as you can see, it looks like this first employee has an above average salary, whereas the next several people have a below average salary for their respective departments. All right, let's take a look at another way that we can use Copilot here in Excel. I'm going to go ahead and head to the project task table. Here on the project task table, I saw that I had several employees that have been assigned to different tasks on each project. And I also have a column that is named project ID, as well as a column named number of hours. I started to think of different ways that I could come up with different functions to show you with this data set. But I thought, you know what? If I'm having a hard time coming up with it, let's see if Copilot can help me come up with some insights. I went ahead and clicked on that project 101 cell right here, H2, and I'm going to click on that Copilot button again. And instead of typing right here in the chat box, I'm going to go ahead and say, suggest me a formula column. I'm giving Copilot a second to think because it's going to analyze all of the data inside of my table. And it's going to tell me a function that I might want to take a look at. It's telling me after looking at the table, in column O, I might want to analyze my total hours by project. It recognized that I had several different project numbers, but some of those projects have multiple lines, which means they have multiple hours of work. It suggested I use the sum if function to total the number of hours for the project based on the project name. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that function in. I'm going to move over to column O, and I'm going to rename that to total projects by hours, or total hours by project. And I'm going to paste that function in. And as you can see, it looks like this project 101 is the top 3 lines. So I'm going to shift down to show you that the top 3 lines of project 101 all are sharing a total hours of 462 hours for that project. It looks like the next project right here is just a one-liner with only one total number of hours. And as a matter of fact, that project was aborted, but it took 267 hours before it was abandoned. And that was just 2 demonstrations of how we could leverage Copilot to streamline our processes. Now let's dig into Power Pivot. Power Pivot is great because it allows you to bring all of your different tables that you have here in your worksheet and create a data model with them. It also allows you to add a date table to your data model, so then you can go through and filter your data by date, by month, by very different specific categories. Let's go ahead and get Power Pivot added to our tabs up here in our ribbon. This is an add-in, so you will need to go to File, Options, and then we need to go to the Add-ins setting, where we're going to manage not Excel add-ins, we're going to go to COM add-ins. Go ahead and click Go. And we are going to check Microsoft Power Pivot and click OK. Now, you should see Power Pivot joining us right up here at the top of our ribbon. If for some reason you're still not seeing it, go ahead and click through those settings one more time and hopefully it'll show up there. And if not, save your file, get out of it, come back in. Typically it'll show up then. Go ahead and click on Power Pivot, where we'll have the opportunity to manage our data models. Before we do that, I actually need to add my tables into my data model. We're going to go ahead and click on this projects table first, and I'm going to click that Add Data Model button, where it looks like my projects query is going to come into my data model. Now, right now, I only have my projects tab, so I'm going to go ahead and get out of the Power Query Editor by clicking the X button at the top, and I'm going to click through all 4 tabs, adding that information to my data model. I've got my projects, I've added projects task. Go ahead, click through that headquarter location. And then finally, the last one that I want to include is that employee tab. I'm going to go ahead and leave sheet 1 off of my data model, but as you can see, I have all 4 queries. Now, this is nice. We see it in table view, but I can see table view right back here in my worksheets already. In the Power Query Editor, we have the ability to switch to diagram view. Go ahead and click on diagram view, and you will see it brings up boxes that gives the column names in a list for each of the different tables that I have in my data model. I can move these tables around if I want to get them a little bit more organized. And then here's where the great part comes in. We actually can create relationships between these tables so that if I pull data from my employee table and I want it to link to information in my projects task table, I'm able to do that, and my data will be talking to one another whenever I'm building it in a pivot table. So let's go ahead and link our ID columns. I want to link my employee ID to that employee ID in my projects task. I'm simply just picking up that column name that's the exact same and dropping it on top of the other. A relationship line is formed. It looks like this is a one-to-many relationship. One-to-many is going to be optimal when you're building a data model, especially one like this where I've got one employee name and my employee task, but that employee might have more than one project task that they are in charge of. We're going to go ahead and link the project ID to the project ID and the project task. And then finally, I'm going to link the headquarter location to that employee reporting location. Now, it looks good. I've got a data model where all of my tables are linked together. The last missing piece to this is going to be our date table. I want to be able to filter my projects by year, by month. I want to break down the information back by date. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Design tab where you see a date table under the calendars portion of our ribbon. We're going to go ahead and click on Date Table, and we're going to build a new date table. You'll see all of the columns that it automatically created for us in our calendar table. We have a column for year, a column for month number, and it even built a date hierarchy for us, which is kind of nice because whenever we want to sort our data by date in a pivot table, it's automatically going to have our year, month, and date nested underneath each other. Now, I just need to link it to information in my table. In my case, I'm going to build my pivot table that is going to determine my projects by year or projects by month within that year. So I'm going to go ahead and link my date to my start date of my project. All right, and finally, my calendar table is finished. I can shrink this information back down if I want it to all flow a little bit smoother and show you how these tables are all linked together without these lines overlapping one another. My calendar is linked to my projects are linked to project tasks are linked to my employees, and then my employees are linked to their location where they report to for work. Now, before I move on, it is important to mention that whenever you're building a date table in Power Pivot, the date table is created by searching all of the dates in that data model. In this instance, my employee table has a higher date for my employees. Some of these employees are dating back to starting in 2010, whereas my projects didn't start being tracked in this spreadsheet until 2023. So I'm going to go ahead and modify the dates that start and end my calendar table simply because whenever I build my pivot table, I don't want my dates dating back all the way to 2010 because I shouldn't have any projects that are starting in 2010. So click on that date table with your calendar table selected, and we're going to click Update Range where we can change the start date to 2023 when my first project existed. And finally, click OK. Now that we've set up our data model in Power Pivot, we've updated the dates in our calendar table. The final step is turning all of this information into a pivot table and getting information from one table, linking to information on another table. Let's go ahead and click the Home tab where you'll see our pivot table option, and we're going to go ahead and create a pivot table with this information. Now, I'm going to go ahead and build it as a new worksheet because I simply don't like to build a pivot table on a worksheet where I've already got a lot of information sitting, and I'm going to click OK. Now that I have my pivot table here on sheet 2, you can see I've got all of my pivot table fields here on the right side of my screen. If I don't have these 4 boxes because yours might look a little bit different, you are able to change the way that these fields look, as well as pick the way that you think looks best. I'm going to go ahead and go with my fields being along the right side. That way I can open up my data over here on the left and get a little bit longer of a list. I want to bring my date hierarchy into my rows. And I want to be able to search the amount of projects that have been had for each year in my data. So I'm going to go ahead and grab those projects and grab that project name. Whoop, it looks like I put them in the wrong spot. We're going to move it to the values. As you will see, we've got 11 projects that were started in 2023, 10 in 2024. And then our data for 2025 looks like the last time that data was refreshed was in January. So I can even pinpoint by opening and expanding by clicking those plus signs, expanding to the exact date in January because I have a hierarchy in my rows. I can see one project was started on the 1st of January. Can scoop that information back up. I can open up 2024 and pinpoint every single month that a project was started as well. What if I wanted to add another pivot table to this exact same sheet where I can analyze my data instead of by year, I can analyze it over here, possibly by department. Let's go ahead in my Power Pivot, click to another cell on my sheet and click Manage. I'm going to go ahead and click that pivot table box, and I'm going to open up another pivot table. Now it'll ask me, do I want to create my new pivot table on a new worksheet? Or in this instance, I'm going to go ahead and select existing worksheet. Looks like it's going to drop right here into cell G3. I will click OK. And just like that, I can add more information to this second pivot table. I can say, let's look at our projects by department. Let's see each of the project tasks that were assigned to each department. I can see the number of hours that have been spent on projects by each department. And if I wanted to, I could switch out these departments. I could search by projects instead of departments. I can see the count of tasks that are tied to every single project. You see Project Alpha has the most number of tasks. It also has the most number of hours that are being used. So it looks good, but by building a pivot table, we're giving ourselves the opportunity to analyze our project data a little bit deeper without having to create all of these different calculations and store all of this information in cells. Now that I have the sum of hours in here, I want to show you what I can do to edit the way that these numeric values are being presented. If I left click on that sum of number of hours, I can modify the field settings. If I wanted to get an average of those project tasks or something like that, I could. In my case, sum is great because I want the total number of hours. But I want a comma to be in here whenever it's got 4,746. I'm going to click that number format, and I'm going to go to number and click that use 1000 separator. Now, in this instance, it's going to go ahead and put into decimal places because that's how it's already designed and set up. If I don't want any decimal places, I'm just going to change that to 0 and click OK. And just like that, it's included our comma in our grand total. If I wanted to go back, instead of searching by the project name again, I could search removing that field. I could search again by that project department. And now you can see our cumulative total of hours based on each department. And now that you know a little bit more about pivot tables, you're able to make informed decisions about projects and people that you're allowing tasks to be assigned to. As you can see here, it looks like the IT department has a huge number of tasks as well as a large amount of hours that they have that are being dedicated to these projects, whereas some of these other departments have less hours. Now, maybe there's a reason for that, and maybe you're okay with that within your organization. But by building this into a pivot table, you're able to actually compare the data, see the numbers, and not just think, that IT department might be working a few more hours on projects than our finance department. And as we wrap up today's session, I'm going to encourage everyone to stick around for Angelica's Power BI session, where you will truly learn how to transform your data. We've already seen how a combination of data modeling, pivot tables, and functions in Excel can help you efficiently summarize and analyze your data. Angelica will be demonstrating Power BI, showcasing its powerful tools for data analysis and visualizations. Additionally, we have a course in our on-demand learning catalog that incorporates Excel into Power BI, providing comprehensive approach to data analysis. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoy the upcoming Power BI session.